Hello, welcome back to Laser Cut and Fly RC Models. I'm the Laser Model Guy. What I want to do in this video is start to produce a DLG, which is a Discus Launch Glider. I've found a good plan and it's on Outerzone, and I'll show you where we get that from. And then we're going to build a hand-launched glider. I'm really looking forward to doing it. It's unlike anything we've done before. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any content, and let's go make a DLG. Okay, so first of all, if we go to Outerzone, and then in order to get our plan, and then in the search I'm going to put DLG. And then when we search, we find there's only one Discus Launched Glider or Discus Launch Glider in here. So if we select that, go to the plan details, there's a nice picture of the airplane there and a bit of an overview of the plan. So what we can do then is, by just clicking on the plan file, we'll download that. It'll go straight into our download, where we can then move it either to our desktop or into whatever folder you're using for this for this build. Okay, so this is a copy of the plan. Now this is a modern vector plan, so everything will just work in Lightburn. It'll already be Lightburn friendly. We won't have to do anything with these components. So what we'll do is we'll open Lightburn, and then I'll import that file, DLG. This is where I've got it, so double click on that, and now that is imported into Lightburn. So all I'm going to do is move the plan across so it's sat next to my workspace. This is the workspace for the laser, the Sculptfun S9. Now what you'll notice is that for whatever reason, and I don't know what the reason is, the Lightburn program has not brought the notes with it. So the arrows are there, but if you look at the original plan, you can see there's notes here. So for example, this here is carbon fibre tube spar. So that means we're going to have to get some carbon fibre tube. And I think also I might look at this leading edge here. It's saying that it's made out of 1/8 dowel, which would be 3.2mm dowel. But I might look at using carbon fibre there, which will mean that I'll have to cut in these wing tips so that we can sink the carbon fibre tube in without having to taper the end. So we'll have a look at that when we come to assembly and see how we get on with that. Now, if we go to Lightburn, what we find is these components, they're already made up as vector files, so we'll be able to use them as our as drawings that are ready to cut. The problem that I've got with them though is, obviously we need to remove this trailing edge from the from these ribs. But if I take hold of a piece of this rib and move it, you see that it's made up out of small bits of line and such. So what I'm going to do is just Control Z, Z and Control Z to get all them back to where they were. What I'll do is, I think the best way for us to go about this is to bring that across, and then if we go to nodes, we can click on this part of the top of that rib, and if we hover over this point here, we can insert a node just like that, and then we can delete those nodes by highlighting them and pressing D. And then on this bottom edge if we hover right over this point and press I to insert a node, then we can select these nodes and press D to delete those. Then if we come off nodes, we can select this bit back here, get rid of that. And now what we've got is we've got the rib ready to sit straight onto our trailing edge. So if we group that, that would in effect be that rib completed. But there's just one thing I'd like to check, and that is the height of this point here. That's saying it's 3.15, so that'll fit nicely onto a piece of 1/8 trailing edge. So that's absolutely fine. Okay, so if we just go back to our original drawing, we can see that that rib that we've just copied is W2. So I'm going to label that up W2. Just bring that down to, I don't know, maybe 4mm. We'll call that W2, and we will assign that our layer 01, which we will set up when we come to do that. We'll set it up as our engraving layer, and 00 will be our cutting layer. So just group again to make sure that our letter stays with us. And there we have our first rib done. Now bear in mind there's going to be one on this side and then one on the other side, so we need to do a quick copy and then a quick Control V, so we've got two of those. And before we stop, what we'll do is we'll just put our tabs in there. Should have really done this before I copied and pasted, or before I copied the rib. And then what those tabs will do, if we just go to preview and we zoom in, you can see there's a little gap there of 0.5 mm, top and bottom. And all that'll do is that will mean that when we come to cut these components out, they won't fall out of the balsa wood. Okay, so that's W2. So what I'll do is I will just copy each of these in exactly the same way. I'll show you what those ribs look like once they're all done. Well, that's an interesting thing. I've now created W1 in exactly the same way as I created W2, and what I'm looking at here is it looks like W1 on this drawing is shorter than W2. So if we go back to the original PDF here, yeah, you can see there, you can see that W1 is actually shorter than W2, which is a little bit strange. It's obviously inaccurate. Let's just check that now on the wing itself. So if we take W1 and we bring it up to where it should sit on the wing plan, if we just bring this down so that the bottom of the rib is actually on the trailing edge. When we come up here and we look, although we're a little bit out there, we can see this rib is going to be too short. So let's bring the other one over, W2, and if we put that on the, if we put that onto the plan, just bring the bottom of that wing tip, that rib up. So I'll just use Shift and Control and my arrow keys to just get that line exactly right there. And if we go up to the top, we find that rib is considerably too long. So this wing would actually be going upwards there instead of, or the slope of the leading edge would be incorrect. So what we'll have to do is we'll have to go about this in a slightly different way, which is a little bit disappointing because you would sort of rely on the accuracy of these plans. But never mind. Let's work out how we're going to deal with it. And my thoughts on the matter are, whoops, Control Z. My thoughts on the matter are, we've now got W1. So what I think we should do is ungroup. Unfortunately, we have to do that twice because we've grouped it twice. Just make sure that's all ungrouped. Yep, it is. So Control Z. What I think we need to do is we'll remove our let's just move that out of the way for now. And then what we'll do is we will group the outer line, and we'll bring that over, and all I'm going to do is put that in position on the plan. So I'm going to scroll right in and make sure that I'm absolutely bang on. There we go. And then I'm going to come to the top, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to just first of all correct the angle a little. I'm just going to drag that up until this part of the rounded bird's mouth is touching the bottom edge of our dowel, or of what will be our dowel. Just like that. I think now that that is the correct height. Our carbon fibre tube is slightly above centre. It's around the centre of this section here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just measure that section just there, and that is 16 millimeters, or maybe 16.6 millimeters. So I want that to be 8 millimeters from the bottom, the center of that hole. So if I just move the whole thing over, just move the whole thing over until we are in the center, and we can check that with our ruler. Just go from there to there, and that is now 8.6. so we want to move 3/10 of a millimeter over. So if I press Control and Shift 2, 3, there we are. I can now come back and grab our .3mm circle, and I can put that right on our spar there, and I know now that that spar will line up with that hole. Okay, so if I press Control, that's already selected. I'll press Control, I'll select the outer edge as well, and then I can group those, and I can bring that component back, and I now know that that is the correct size. And unfortunately we're going to have to do that with each of these ribs. So that is W1, W1, and I will now group that, and I'll put my tabs in just like that, and then I will Control C, copy, Control V, so I've now got the two W1s. So what I'll do now is I'll do exactly the same with W2, and I'll do that so that we can all see it, and then I'll carry out that process with all of the other wing ribs, just to make sure that they're all the correct size. So just ungroup, and unfortunately we have to ungroup again because I grouped twice earlier. We can delete W2, and we can just grab our little disc there, our little circle, and move it over to there. I can then group this and bring it over to where we want it to be. This one's going to be W2, and it's going to sit right there. Okay, so I just zoom right in, and then using Control and Shift, and then the down arrows, the down arrow, I'm going to just bring that down. Just turn that a little. There we go. Just move over so we're in the right place, and then I can come up to the top, and I just want to move it down until this bottom of this bird's mouth is just level with the bottom of the line of this leading edge, just like that. There you go. That is now perfect. Now that looks like we are right in the middle there, so I can bring back the 3mm circle, and then I can position that using my arrows. And I'm confident that that will be exactly in line with this spar now. Okay, so I press Control and I select the rib itself, and then I can group, and we now have W2. It's just a little bit disappointing that we're having to do this, because I would have expected the plan to have been you know, spot on, but never mind. So W2, and then if we group those again, I can then Control C, Control V, and I've now got a copy of W2. So I've got both of those ribs now done. So I'm going to have to do that and do the check, the size check on each one of them, and then reposition the hole for the spar. I'm going to have to do that with each of them. So what I'll do is I'll just get on with that, and then I'll bring you back and show you what they look like in just a minute once I've gone through that process. Okay, so I've completed that process now, and I've got all of the wing ribs made up in pairs. So that's all the wing ribs done. Next I'm going to look at the wing tips. Now what it says on the original plan, just go to the original plan, it says the wing tips here are 1/8 sheet wing tip. Now when we look at the rib that meets the wing tip, when we measure that, the depth of this is 8.9 millimeters. It's saying there. We're not quite upright with that line, but it's over 8 millimeters anyway. So what I'm thinking is we really need to have a laminated wing tip where we've got probably 3 pieces of material, and then we'll have to sand that down first of all to fit the profile of the last rib, and then sand it down to a fine, to a fine edge at the wingtip. And the reason that I think we should do that is that in order to accommodate this, which is the carbon fibre tube that runs through the centre of all of the ribs, because I think if the middle laminate sheet, if we make 3 sheets of or 3 pieces of this balsa wingtip, the middle one can have a slot cut into it to accommodate this pole, and then it will be secured firmly within the wingtip. And then when we drill through the wingtip to put our launching peg, then I think that will probably be a better way of doing it than having having a single tip with the spar glued on the top of it. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking that we do with that. So if I just take one of these wing tips across, I'll just check that for size. Yeah, that looks about right on there. So if I bring this across, and we can, let me just have a little look what we got here. Yeah, it's like the other one, it's all in separate pieces. So if I Control Z, I think the best way to deal with this one is, instead of grouping this and then manipulating it as a group of, or as a group of separate components, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just trace the outline. I'm going to reshape the outline with lines and nodes, just so that we don't have any difficulties as we go forward. So I'll just change the layer so that I can see the line against our shape. So I just position on this corner and bring that down to there, and then we've got a straight piece there, and then into our curve. And all I'm doing is I'm going to just click on that in a number of places to create nodes, which will then later change to smooth curve nodes. And this piece here seems, oh no, it's not quite flat. Okay, so we'll go to nodes, and the first thing we need to do is get onto the corner here, which I missed by a mile. Okay, so that straight edge there is nice now. So if we go to each of these nodes, and then we convert them into smooth curve nodes by clicking on and then pressing S. And then what we find is, I think we'll have quite a nice shape there. Just bring this one out a little. Perfect. Okay. So if we come off there, that is now more or less the shape of our wingtip. Quite happy with that. So we'll just put this circle in. There we go. So just for the time being, I'm going to group these two. by first clicking on that one, then press Control, click on this one, and then I can group, and then when I bring that away it will have its hole to reduce the weight already built in. Okay, so the last thing I need to do in order to complete the wing is I'm going to make the components which will laminate this end so that we can shape it to the same size as or to the same profile as that last rib. So what I'm going to do is just Control C and then Control V, make a copy, and that copy, what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to cut a slot in that so that we can put this central spar into the middle section of our laminate. So I'll just position that perfectly using Control, Shift and the arrow keys, and that's where we need to be. Now if I just change the colour of that so that so we can see it, I've changed it to red. I just ungroup and then if I then go to nodes, then all I need to do is hover over here, click I, insert a node, and then exactly the same just there, insert a node, and then somewhere in the middle we can insert another node, and I can bring that, oops, somewhere in the middle, insert another node, okay. They jumped to where that other node was, so if I just delete that one by highlighting it and press D, and then I can bring this one back to where it should be. Now all I want to do, I only want to bring this in part way into the wingtip. I don't want to go as far as this, because otherwise when we taper down the wingtip on the outsides it'll expose the carbon tube. So if I make it around that size, that means it will be inside the wingtip by, we can measure that, by nearly 20 millimeters, 19.36 millimeters, and that will be plenty for it to, because it will be sandwiched in. Okay, so if I now select that, and then I'm going to Control and select the circle again, and then we can group. And what I've got now is I've got the center part of our laminate that I'm going to make this wingtip out of. So what I want to do with this one here is I'm going to make this come beyond to the very leading edge, and then we'll be filing that, or we'll be sanding that down. So if I bring that over and I put that back in place just the same as the other one, I'll just change it to a different colour, and then we'll move it into place using Control Shift and then the arrow keys. As such, and then what I want to do is we can ungroup, and then I want to go to nodes. If I grab all of those nodes and then just Control Shift and bring them all up till they're in the center, and what that means is that our the outer part of our laminate will now go over the center of the leading edge, so I'll be able to sand them down and it'll come to a smooth taper, and then it'll go round the leading edge. And of course the leading edge will sit inside on the front of this centerpiece here. So I'll show you how all that fits together when we come to do assembly. But what I want to do now is group our components again, and then bring them over. And now what I've got is I've got my two, if I copy and then paste, I've now got my two outer leaves and the center leaf. Now what I'll be doing is the top part of the wingtip will be in 1/8 balsa or 3.2 millimeters. The center part will be 3.2 millimeters and the bottom part will be 1.6 millimeters, and that will bring us up to the right thickness to be able to match this end wingtip. So all I need to do with these is convert them all to the cutting layer, and then I need to produce a copy of all of those, and I'll bring that here and then Control V. And then what I want to do with those is, using our mirror function up here, just flip those round, then I need to take one of these or two of these, and they'll be our 1/16 material, so they'll go onto a different cutting sheet. And these four here, I will find a place for them now on our 1/8 cutting sheet, and we'll be able to send the wing components all off to the laser. So that's all I'm going to do for this video. What I'm going to do in the next video is I'm going to produce all the components for the main body and the vertical stabilizer and the horizontal stabilizer, and once they're all laid out on sheets, I'll send them to the laser, and that will be in the next video. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time.